Television doctors are quacks? Who could have anticipated? Now, I will clarify. I am not an expert on any of this, but neither are these guys. So obviously there are medical professionals all around the world trying to do their best to figure out, how we deal with this illness, how we can even begin to start going back to some semblance of normal. I think everybody's got their own professionals, but in the United States, it is Dr. Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. What one might call an expert in the field. And he's been pretty vocal in his caution towards, dialing back safety precautions and social distancing rules because, global pandemic and all that. But not everyone is as sure as the world's premier medical community. So you might be wondering, what's the answer? What do we do when we just can't exercise a little bit of self-restraint and stay away from other people? Well, it's okay, because we've consulted someone even more in the know. They've consulted Dr. Phil.
We have people dying. 45,000 people a year die from automobile accidents, 480,000 from cigarettes, 360,000 a year from swimming pools, but we don't shut the country down for that. But yet we're doing it for this.
It's gonna be okay, everybody. We can go back to normal because so many people die in car accidents and drowning and from smoking. And we don't shut anything down for those deaths, so why would a highly contagious illness be any different? This was the equivalent of asking somebody with outdated first aid training to perform a surgery. No one's gonna argue that these situations are rough on everybody. We're all dealing with anxiety and stress and who knows what else. And we obviously have to be thinking forward to the future about how we can start working things back to normal, figuring out how to continue trying to keep people as safe as possible, while also making sure that we're prioritizing people having access to food and the food production and shelter and medical supplies and access to medical care. But Phil, you gotta be taking into account the fact that a lot of those negative feelings and feelings of anxiety are coming from the disease itself. People worried about getting it, worried about dying, worried about passing it on to a loved one, afraid of getting it and ending up in a hospital and then really not being able to provide for your family at all. We have healthcare professionals begging us to do our part because they are overrun and overworked. And some people are upset that they can't go down to the local Hooters and pretend they're there for the chicken wings. And I get why Laura here was so on board with all of his horrible analogies and examples because she seems to be quite the expert herself.
We don't have a vaccine for HIV. And life did go on.
Look, I'm gonna be honest here. I don't know what Laura does in public or how she thinks HIV is transmitted to compare it to the Rona, but I'm very concerned. Also, the way he's saying lockdown, he's making it sound like people literally can't go everywhere. You can go out while being mindful. You can get your groceries when you need. A lot of places have curbside pickup for a variety of different things. You can order takeout, delivery. And we're incredibly privileged to be alive during the internet age when you can contact people better than ever. I get that you can't be in the same room with people, but we have access to countless methods of communication without having to be on the same continent as someone else. And on top of that, we have access to the entire world library of entertainment. Essentially, anything that has ever been made is available to you in the comfort of your own home. Obviously, there are people in horrible home situations, and that's a tragedy, and it's an entirely other different situation that needs to be addressed.
So we think we're protecting people's lives by keeping them locked up. You keep them locked up long enough, there's a paradoxical effect. You actually destroy more lives than you do by letting them go out and protect themselves and opt into their lives to fight for what they believe in.
Okay, what are you even trying to suggest here? This is a virus, not an enemy that you can fight by yelling at it. I get that people want answers about when they can get back to work and what can happen, but just minimize your trips, stay away from people, and if you're outside, listen to your local officials. Different places are gonna have different regulations depending on population density, how many people are already infected in that area, how severely they have to act to start lowering those numbers. And we're all just doing the best we can, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks. People are losing their jobs, people are getting sick while alone, but our government should be helping those people right now. This is the second economy collapsing situation that's happened in another 15 years, and this time we have the added benefit of a global illness. Opening things up faster isn't gonna help if all the people working those customer-facing jobs just start getting super sick because other people aren't minding distancing rules or going out when they're carrying the illness. We're not gonna make anything better if hospitals and healthcare workers can't actually handle the influx of people that end up getting sick. Eventually, things will start to reopen, and hopefully by then we'll be in a better position to deal with things, and our more at-risk people will just do the best they they can to stay inside, and people will do the best to help them. Because it's all just about flattening that curve. But some people, might I add, a lot of people that fall under the demographic of those most likely to be affected, including Dr. Phil, who is 69 years old, are being really wishy-washy about the whole thing. Most likely because they're falling under that misguided belief that like, this could never happen to me. It can happen to you. So back to Dr. Phil. As I've mentioned numerous times before, he is not actually a doctor, and at least he's definitely not that kind of doctor. He has a PhD, but he's not currently licensed in psychology, and it's been that way for a very long time.
He hasn't had a license to practice that since I graduated medical school.
And again, not that kind of doctor. He doesn't really have any business weighing in on this situation beyond just, maybe talking about increasing mental health initiatives for people that are in lockdown. I get that they had him on mostly to talk about the mental effects of the quarantine, which, yeah, can and will mess people up, but he flipped it into an area that he has absolutely no business talking about and no knowledge and no expertise because he has no expertise. So why the are we asking for his advice on national television? And he tried to run it back on one of his live streams yesterday, so let's take a look at some of these clarifications.
Now, last night I said we as a society have chosen to live with certain controllable deadly risk every day. And I referred to them as numbers of deaths that we apparently find acceptable because we do little or nothing about them.
Are you stupid? How are you even comparing those situations to this? Car and pool deaths are not contagious, and yes, we do. We are constantly coming up with new methods of making cars safer, of making travel safer. People can't drive without taking a test, and I'm pretty sure it's well documented that you should always be watching people in pool situations because drowning is highly likely. And here he's really trying to stress the fact that we need to be mindful of the mental health issues, which if that is how he had worded it on the Laura Ingraham show, people wouldn't be angry about it. But that's not how he worded it.
People start having enough problems in lockdown that it will actually create more destruction and actually more death across time than the actual virus will itself.
We need resources for those in horrible home situations. We need resources for the mentally unwell. We need resources for those who are struggling to eat. These are things we need resources for all the time. Now we're just dealing with it way more than we normally are. And I don't think sending people back out in full force is the answer because most people seem more concerned about when they're getting their next haircut. You also keep telling people to ignore the example you gave because, they made you sound like an idiot, and just to focus on the message. So let's take another listen at that message.
45,000 people a year die from automobile accidents. We don't shut the country down for that, but yet we're doing it for this.
Loud and clear, asshat. If anything, we're helping feed two birds with one scone. Less cars on the road, less auto accidents, less chance of transmission. Win-win, dummy. Now, as I mentioned, I've had issues with Dr. Phil forever, I think. I talked about them a little bit in this video, or maybe a lot of it in this video that I'll have linked up here. It's quite old at this point, but it gives you an idea. I'm pretty sure we're well aware that he mostly just exploits kids for cash on his show. He basically just brings anybody on who's looking for their 15 minutes and uses them for views, and it's really no surprise. He's made a bunch of unfounded claims about video games. He's been sued numerous times and tried to help a woman who was worried about her 5-year-old son being gay by telling her to stop letting him play with girly toys. For a long time, most of the stories on his show are either fake or highly exaggerated because it's for television, and clearly have more to do with theatrics than genuine help. Why people think he's more reliable than Maury or any other daytime host like this is beyond me. But thankfully, some of his fan base is finally seeing him for the quack that he is. It's shocking that it took a global pandemic for people to realize that maybe we shouldn't be listening to Dr. Phil, who's not a doctor, but better late than never. In fact, my favorite thing of all time has been the swarm of people saying specifically that they're removing him from their DVR, which I just find so funny. I always forget that, people still use satellite and cable and that DVRs are a thing. Great that they're doing it, but it just seemed like funny that was like the ongoing thing I kept seeing. I love that people cared about Dr. Phil so much that they had like every episode set to tape. But Dr. Phil is not alone. Oprah's resident pseudoscientist for profit, Dr. Oz, also got in on the situation and said these very insightful things about getting kids back to school.
First, we need our mojo back. Let's start with things that are really critical to the nation where we think we might be able to open without getting into a lot of trouble. I tell you, schools are a very appetizing opportunity.
Appetizing opportunity.
Appetizing? Why that word?
I just saw a nice piece in The Lancet arguing that the opening of schools may only cost us 2 to 3% in terms of total mortality. everybody.
Also, these stats are based on a projected study. Realistically, we don't know how serious things could get if kids were just still in school. So even though this wasn't implying 2 to 3% of the entire population and just 2 to 3% higher, and I think it was actually 2 to 4% higher than what the final death toll would be, so it's in the thousands, not the millions, still not a cool thing to say so flippantly. But yeah, Dr. Oz is basically just as bad as our girl Gwyneth. He's promoted shitty fat burners he claimed required no exercise or proper diet to work, and the clinical trials prove that that was a lie and had never actually been corroborated. He also got in shit for promoting metabolism boosters, and who could forget the classic 7-day grapefruit detox? We love it when doctors promote detoxes. He's lied about profiting from products he recommends on his show. He was called out by dentists for his at-home teeth whitening practice, which involved lemon juice and baking powder, promoted home cold remedies, which he said could take up to 3 weeks to work, which is, you know, when a cold would normally work its way out, bringing people on who claimed they could cure homosexuality, said that GMOs were a cause of autism. So back to his stupid comment, he issued a non-apology yesterday, trying to imply that it was us that didn't understand him.
I've realized my comments on risks around opening schools have confused and upset people. We know for many kids, school is a place of security, nutrition, and learning that is missing right now.
I'm pretty sure no one is confused, you turnip. No one's going to argue that school is a beneficial place for a lot of children, but you have no business making these statements when you aren't an expert in this field. This is what it looks like when you start reopening things and people don't take it seriously. This is like a scene out of Jaws. And if you want them to go back to school so they can feel safe, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd feel safe in a school environment sitting in a classroom trapped with a bunch of people with recycled air and a bunch of dumb kids who are definitely gonna cough on things because they think it's funny, because kids are dumb. So are adults. I saw adults doing this too. People suck. I get that a lot of kids rely on school for food, but do you realize how messed up that even is as a concept? Children shouldn't be going hungry in the United States. I get that it's worse in a lot of situations now because a lot of people are losing their jobs, but again, this is just an overall societal failure at its peak. So I think it's overall just time to stop listening to these people. The doctor title is misleading, especially when it comes to Phil, even though Oz is medically trained. He's a heart surgeon. He doesn't specialize in these diet areas that he's often talking about. He doesn't specialize in virus and transmission of illnesses. And he's just as, if not more dangerous than people like Gwyneth Paltrow because of the platform he's been provided and the fact that he does have medical training. And speaking of which, let's talk about the overlord that helped create these beasts. Oprah is the main reason why Oz and Phil are in the positions that they currently are. She's featured them on her network, has not remotely done her due diligence on them for what I can only imagine has to do with massive financial reasons. And I realize that everybody loves Oprah, but until she vocally separates herself from these two asshats, she just can't be trusted. Oprah, your network empire ain't worth shit if this is gonna be your legacy. And that's really it. It sucks. We all want things to get back to normal. A lot of us are in significantly better positions than other people. We're all angry and frustrated at the way things are. But again, I'm also not an expert. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that these guys aren't it. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll catch you all later.